The morning sun was already climbing high when David pulled his old Honda into the parking lot of Riverside Auto Sales. The dealership stretched across nearly 2 acres, with rows of shiny new cars gleaming under the bright lights. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. David sat in his car for a moment, taking it all in. This place was his now. Well, technically it had been his for exactly 48 hours, but nobody here knew that yet. He'd worked 15 years to get to this moment. Started as a mechanic, then moved into sales, saved every dollar he could, learned the business inside and out. When the opportunity came to buy this dealership chain, he jumped at it. 7 locations across the state, and this one was supposed to be the crown jewel. The numbers looked good on paper, but David wanted to see the real picture. That's why he was here, dressed in regular jeans and a simple blue shirt, looking like any other customer who might walk through those doors. David stepped out of his car and walked toward the entrance. The showroom floor was massive, filled with luxury vehicles that caught the light just right. A red sports car sat in the center, probably worth more than most people made in a year. He could hear the soft music playing overhead, smell that new car scent they pumped through the vents. A few salespeople stood near the back, chatting and laughing. They glanced his way but didn't move. He walked slowly through the aisles, running his fingers along the smooth hoods of the cars. David had always loved vehicles, the engineering, the design, everything about them. He stopped at a black SUV with leather seats and every feature you could imagine. The price tag made him whistle quietly. It was steep, but he knew people paid it. That's what made this business work. From the corner of his eye, David noticed the salespeople. They were helping a couple near the sedans, all smiles and enthusiasm. An older gentleman in a suit got immediate attention when he walked in. But nobody came over to David. He waited, still looking at the SUV, reading the information card in the window. 5 minutes passed. Then 10 finally, footsteps approached from behind. David turned to see a man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His name tag read Gerald Brennan, General Manager. The man looked David up and down, taking in his casual clothes and modest appearance. "Can I help you find something?" Gerald asked, but his tone suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "Just looking at your inventory," David replied calmly. "Nice selection you've got here." Gerald nodded slowly. "Yes, well, these are premium vehicles. Top of the line. Most of them start around 60, 70,000. He paused, letting those numbers hang in the air. "Are you looking for something specific or just browsing?" David caught the emphasis on that last word. Just browsing. Like he was killing time at a mall, not a serious buyer. He'd heard this tone before, felt this treatment before. It never stopped stinging, but he'd learned to keep his face neutral. "I'm interested in what you have," David said simply. "Maybe one of these SUVs. What can you tell me about this model?" Gerald shifted his weight, glancing back at his sales team. "Look, friend, I appreciate your interest, but I'm going to be straight with you. These vehicles require excellent credit, significant down payments. We're not a buy here, pay here lot." He gestured vaguely toward the street. "There's a place about 3 miles down that might be more in your range. Good, reliable used cars." The words landed exactly as Gerald intended them to. David felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "I didn't ask about used cars. I asked about this vehicle." Gerald's fake smile disappeared completely. "Sir, I'm trying to save you time. And frankly, you're taking up space on my showroom floor during business hours. Unless you have a serious interest and the means to back it up, I'm going to have to ask you to move along." Other staff members had noticed the conversation now. Some looked uncomfortable, averting their eyes. Others watched with expressions that said they agreed with their manager. David looked around at all of them, these people who worked for him without knowing it, and felt something heavy settle in his chest. This was supposed to be different. He'd bought this place to build something better. "I'd like to speak with the owner," David said quietly. Gerald actually laughed at that. "The owner?" "The owner would tell you the same thing I'm telling you. This is a high-end establishment. We serve a certain clientele." He crossed his arms. "Now, I've been polite, but I'm asking you to leave. You can walk out on your own, or I can have security escort you. Your choice." David stood there for a long moment, looking at this man who had no idea what he'd just done. Around them, the showroom had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. David could argue, could reveal who he was right there, watched Gerald's face go pale, but that wasn't the right play. He needed to handle this properly. Document everything, do it right. "Could I have your business card?" David asked. Gerald smirked, pulling out his wallet and handing over a crisp white card. Sure, though I can't imagine what you'll need it for. David took the card, looked at it carefully, then slipped it into his pocket. He met Gerald's eyes one more time, saw the absolute certainty there, the confidence that he'd done the right thing. Then David turned and walked out of the dealership, past all those beautiful cars, back into the sunlight. His hands shook slightly as he got into his Honda. Not from anger, though that was there too. From disappointment. He'd hoped things would be different, that his own business would reflect the values he'd worked so hard to maintain. Instead, he'd found exactly what he'd feared. But tomorrow was coming, and tomorrow would be very different for Gerald Brennan and everyone else at Riverside Auto Sales. David didn't sleep much that night. He kept replaying the scene in his head, Gerald's dismissive tone, the way the other employees had watched without saying a word. He'd bought 7 dealerships, invested millions of dollars, and the flagship location had just thrown him out like he was nobody. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. By 5 in the morning, he was already on the phone with his attorney, Lisa Chen. She'd handled the entire acquisition and knew every detail of the deal. When he told her what happened, there was a long silence on the other end. "You're kidding me," she finally said. "Wish I was. Did anyone else witness this?" "The whole showroom. At least a dozen people saw the whole thing." Lisa let out a long breath. "Okay, give me 2 hours. I'll meet you at your office and we'll handle this properly. Don't do anything until I get there." David spent those 2 hours in his home office, going through the personnel files for Riverside Auto Sales. Gerald Brennan had been with the company for 12 years, worked his way up from sales to manager. His numbers were solid, no major complaints on record, but as David dug deeper, he found small things. Customer reviews mentioning feeling unwelcome. A former employee's exit interview citing concerns about unfair treatment of certain customers. Nothing big enough to raise red flags during the acquisition, but now it all made sense. When Lisa arrived, she brought Tom Rodriguez, the HR director from the corporate office. Tom was in his 40s, former military, the kind of guy who ran things by the book. He looked grim as he shook David's hand. "I've already started pulling records," Tom said. "If this manager has a pattern of discrimination, we need to know before we walk in there." They spent another hour preparing. Lisa insisted David document everything he remembered from yesterday, exact words if possible. She also suggested he wear a suit this time. "Show them who you are," she said. Let that image shift hit hard. At 9 o'clock sharp, they pulled into Riverside Auto Sales in Lisa's Mercedes. David straightened his tie, grabbed his briefcase, and walked toward the same entrance he'd been asked to leave yesterday. This time, Lisa and Tom flanked him like silent guardians. The showroom was busy with morning activity. Salespeople prepped for the day. Someone was detailing a car in the corner, and soft jazz played through the speakers. A young woman at the reception desk looked up and smiled. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "We're here to see Gerald Brennan," Lisa said, her voice professional and firm. "It's urgent." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "We don't need one," Tom said, showing his corporate ID. "We're from the main office." The words main office had an immediate effect. The receptionist picked up her phone, whispered urgently, then pointed toward the hallway. "His office is the 3rd door on the left." They walked through the showroom, and David noticed heads turning. Some of the salespeople from yesterday recognized him, their faces showing confusion. He kept his expression neutral, professional. This wasn't about revenge. This was about accountability. Gerald's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, laughing at something on his computer screen. His assistant stood nearby, organizing folders. Gerald looked up as they entered, and his smile froze when he saw David. For a moment, nobody spoke. David watched the recognition flash across Gerald's face, followed quickly by confusion, then the first hint of fear. "Mr. Brennan," Lisa said, stepping forward and handing him her business card. "I'm Lisa Chen, legal counsel for the new ownership group. This is Tom Rodriguez, Human Resources Director, and I believe you've already met David Thompson, the new majority owner of Riverside Auto Sales and 6 other dealerships in this chain." The blood drained from Gerald's face so fast David thought he might actually faint. Gerald stood up quickly, his chair rolling back and hitting the wall. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Please sit down," David said quietly. He pulled out his phone, placed it on the desk. "I'd like you to explain to me in your own words what happened yesterday when I visited this dealership." Gerald sat down slowly, his hands shaking. "Mr. Thompson, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I didn't know who you were. If you had known I was the owner, you would have treated me differently," David interrupted. "Is that what you're saying?" "No. I mean, yes, but not like that. I was just." Gerald struggled for words. "I was protecting the inventory. Sometimes people come in who aren't serious buyers, and we have to—" "How did you determine I wasn't a serious buyer?" David asked. Gerald's face went red. Your clothes were casual, and you drove an older car, and I just assumed." "You assumed based on what exactly?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Tom stepped forward, placing a folder on Gerald's desk. "Mr. Brennan, we've reviewed your employment record. We've also pulled customer complaints from the past 3 years. There's a pattern here of certain customers receiving substandard service." "That's not true," Gerald protested, but his voice had no strength behind it. Lisa opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. "We also have audio recording from yesterday's interaction. In it, you suggested Mr. Thompson go to a used car lot, implied he couldn't afford vehicles here, and threatened to call security. Would you like to hear it?" Gerald slumped in his chair, all fight draining out of him. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Please, I've worked here for 12 years. I have a family, a mortgage. I can't lose this job." David felt a mix of emotions watching this man crumble. Part of him felt satisfaction, vindication. But another part just felt sad. Sad that this was still happening in 2024, that people still judged others by appearance, that someone could work somewhere for 12 years and learn nothing about respect. "You're suspended, effective immediately," Tom said, sliding papers across the desk. "Pending a full investigation. You'll be paid during the suspension, but you're not to come to this dealership or contact any employees." "But this isn't a discussion," Lisa said firmly. "Sign the papers." Gerald signed with shaking hands. As he stood to leave, he looked at David one last time. "I'm sorry. I really am." David didn't respond. He watched Gerald gather his personal items, his assistant hovering nervously, and walk out of his own office like a man heading to execution. Tom closed the door behind him. "What do you want to do now?" David walked to the window, looking out at the showroom floor where employees were whispering, watching, wondering what was happening. He thought about what came next, about building something better, about making sure what happened to him never happened to anyone else here. "Now," he said, turning back to face them, "we talk to everyone, all of them, and we start changing things." 20 minutes after Gerald left the building, David stood in the main conference room facing 18 employees, sales staff, finance people, the service manager, even the receptionist. They packed into the room, some sitting, most standing, all looking nervous. Word had spread fast. Their manager was gone, corporate was here, and the guy Gerald kicked out yesterday was apparently their new boss. David took a deep breath. This was the moment that would set the tone for everything that came next. "My name is David Thompson," he started, his voice steady. "As of 3 days ago, I own this dealership and 6 others in this state. Yesterday, I came here as a regular customer. I wanted to see how this place really operated without everyone being on their best behavior because the owner was watching." He paused, letting that sink in. A few people shifted uncomfortably. "What I experienced yesterday was unacceptable. I was judged, dismissed, and asked to leave based on how I looked and what I drove. Not because I was rude, not because I was causing trouble, but because your manager decided I didn't belong here." A woman in her 30s raised her hand hesitantly. David recognized her from yesterday, one of the salespeople who'd looked uncomfortable during his confrontation with Gerald. "Go ahead," David said. "Mr. Thompson, some of us wanted to say something yesterday. But Gerald's been here so long and he's the boss and we—" She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "What's your name?" David asked. "Rachel. Rachel Park." "Rachel, I understand. Workplace dynamics are complicated. But here's what I need everyone in this room to understand. What happened yesterday wasn't just wrong morally. It's illegal. It's discrimination. And it costs us business. He gestured around the room. How many potential customers do you think we've lost over the years because they were treated the way I was treated? An older salesman spoke up, his voice defensive. With all due respect, sir, Gerald's approach worked. This dealership has solid numbers. Sometimes you have to filter out the tire kickers to focus on real buyers. Filter out based on what? David challenged. Tell me exactly how you decide who's a real buyer and who isn't. The man's face reddened. Well, you can usually tell by what they're wearing, what they drive, the color of their skin. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. David's voice was firm but not angry. That's the problem. These biases are so built into how we think that we don't even see them anymore. But the customers see them, they feel them, and they leave. Tom stepped forward, distributing packets to everyone. Starting next week, every employee will attend mandatory training sessions. These will cover anti-discrimination policies, unconscious bias, and professional customer service standards. Attendance is not optional. It's a condition of continued employment here. Murmurs rippled through the room. One of the finance guys muttered something under his breath. You have something to say? David asked directly. The man looked up, startled. This feels like we're all being punished for what Gerald did. This isn't punishment, David replied. This is education. And honestly, if you see learning how to treat all customers with respect as punishment, then maybe this isn't the right place for you. The room went quiet again. David could see different reactions on different faces. Some people nodded in agreement. Others looked skeptical. A few seemed genuinely ashamed. This was going to be messy, he realized. Change always was. I know some of you are thinking about leaving, David continued, and that's your choice. But for those who stay, I'm offering something better. A workplace where everyone is valued, where customers are respected regardless of who they are, and where your success isn't measured by how well you can profile people. Rachel raised her hand again. What happens to Gerald? That's between Gerald, HR, and our legal team, Tom answered. But I can tell you that his actions are being investigated thoroughly. Over the next hour, they talked through the new policies. David explained his vision for the dealership, his expectations, his plans. Some employees asked good questions. Others stayed silent, arms crossed, clearly unhappy with the changes. When the meeting finally ended, people filed out in small groups, whispering. Rachel lingered behind. Mr. Thompson, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. She glanced at the door to make sure they were alone. I've worked here for 6 years. I've watched Gerald turn away good customers because they didn't look right to him. I tried to help them anyway, but he'd pull me aside and tell me I was wasting my time. It always bothered me, but I didn't know what to do about it. You can do something about it now, David said. How would you feel about stepping into a leadership role? Interim manager while we sort everything out? Rachel's eyes widened. Me? But there are people here with more seniority. Seniority doesn't matter if they've been doing things wrong for longer. I need someone who understands what we're building here, someone who already knows that every customer deserves respect. Are you that person? She straightened her shoulders. Yes, sir, I am. Good. Report to Tom tomorrow morning. He'll go over everything with you. After Rachel left, David stood alone in the conference room. Through the window, he could see the showroom floor. Business was slow today, probably because word was spreading about the drama. He knew the next few weeks would be rough. Some employees would quit. Some customers might complain about the changes. The local business community might talk. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. When he opened it, his jaw tightened. It was from Gerald, sent from a personal phone. You've made a huge mistake. This will destroy the dealership. I built this place. Without me, it will fail. Enjoy watching your investment crumble. David stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Gerald was wrong. The dealership wasn't going to fail. It was going to become what it should have been all along. Lisa poked her head into the room. How are you holding up? Honestly, I'm exhausted. And we're just getting started. Change is hard, she said. But you're doing the right thing. The right thing, David repeated. Funny how the right thing can feel so complicated. That evening, as David drove home, he passed 3 other car dealerships. He wondered how many of them operated like his had. How many customers had been turned away, humiliated, dismissed. How many people had walked out feeling the way he'd felt yesterday. His phone rang. It was Tom. We've already got 2 resignations, Tom said without preamble. 2 of the senior salespeople. They said they don't agree with the new direction. David wasn't surprised. Let them go. We'll find better people. There's something else. A customer called. Hispanic woman. Said she came in last month and was treated badly by Gerald. She heard about what happened and wants to share her story. Get her information. Document everything. David paused at a red light. Tom, how bad do you think this is going to get before it gets better? Tom was quiet for a moment. Honestly? It might get worse before it improves. But 6 months from now, a year from now, this place will be completely different. Better. You just have to hang on through the rough part. David hung up and continued driving. Tomorrow he'd be back at the dealership starting the real work. Training sessions to organize. New staff to hire. Policies to implement. A culture to rebuild from the ground up. It was going to be the hardest thing he'd ever done, but as he pulled into his driveway and sat in his car for a moment, David felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Real, genuine hope that he could create something meaningful. Not just a successful business, but a place where everyone who walked through the door was treated with dignity. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time in his life, David owned the battlefield, and he wasn't backing down. 3 months later, David sat in his office going through the numbers. They weren't good. Sales were down 18% compared to the same period last year. 5 more employees had quit after the mandatory training sessions. Online reviews were mixed. Some praising the new culture, others complaining that the dealership had gone woke and lost its edge. His phone rang constantly with concerns from investors, questions from the media, and threats from Gerald's lawyer about a wrongful termination lawsuit. Rachel knocked on his door, looking tired. She'd thrown herself into the manager role, working 12-hour days trying to rebuild the team's morale and train new hires. But the stress was showing on her face. We just lost the Henderson account, she said quietly. They've been buying fleet vehicles from us for 8 years. They're moving to Prestige Auto across town. David closed his laptop. Did they say why? Mr. Henderson said he doesn't like the changes. Said business should be about business, not politics. Rachel sat down heavily. David, I believe in what we're doing, but I'm watching this place struggle and I'm starting to wonder if it's worth it? David finished for her. She nodded, looking guilty for even thinking it. David leaned back in his chair. You know what I did before I bought these dealerships? I worked in sales for 12 years. Started at the bottom, worked my way up, and in those 12 years I was followed around stores, questioned about whether I could afford things, treated like a suspect instead of a customer more times than I can count. One time I closed a deal for a $70,000 SUV, and the finance manager asked to see 3 forms of ID because he couldn't believe the sale was legitimate. Rachel winced. So when I finally had enough money to buy my own dealerships, I made myself a promise. I would never ever let anyone feel that way in my business, even if it cost me, even if it was hard. He met her eyes. Is it worth it? Ask me that question after we get through this. But right now, today, we keep going. The training sessions continued every week. David brought in a consultant named Dr. Patricia Williams, a woman who'd spent 20 years studying workplace discrimination. She didn't pull punches. In one session, she made the sales team role-play scenarios where they were the customers being profiled. Some people got defensive. Others had breakthrough moments where they finally understood. One afternoon, David was walking through the showroom when he overheard a conversation. Kevin, one of the salespeople who'd stayed despite the changes, was talking to a young couple looking at sedans. The woman was in scrubs, clearly coming from a hospital shift. The man wore work boots and jeans with paint stains. We're just looking, the woman said apologetically. We know these are probably out of our price range. Kevin smiled warmly. Well, let's see what works for your budget. What are you looking to spend monthly? David watched as Kevin spent 40 minutes with them, never once suggesting they leave or look elsewhere. He showed them several options, explained financing clearly, and treated them exactly like he'd treat anyone else. When they left without buying, Kevin gave them his card and thanked them for their time. David approached him afterward. "That was good work." Kevin looked surprised. "They didn't buy anything, not today, but they'll remember how you treated them, and when they're ready, they'll come back." David paused. "That's what this is about. Building trust. Building relationships. The sales will follow." Kevin nodded slowly. "You know, I almost quit during that first training session. I thought it was unnecessary, that we were fine the way we were. But Dr. Williams said something that stuck with me. She said we don't see our own blind spots, that's what makes them blind spots. Made me think about times I probably made assumptions without realizing it. That's growth," David said. "That's what we need." By month 4, something started to shift. A video went viral on social media, posted by a customer named Mr. Patel. He'd visited 3 dealerships in one day, and at 2 of them, he'd been ignored or treated rudely. Then he came to Riverside Auto Sales. In the video, he showed Rachel greeting him at the door, Kevin giving him a thorough, respectful tour of the inventory, and the finance team treating him professionally throughout the purchase process. "This is how car buying should be," Mr. Patel said into the camera, standing in front of his new vehicle. "No judgment, no games, just respect. If you're tired of being treated like you don't belong, come here." The video got 2 million views in a week. Suddenly, people were driving from other cities to visit the dealership. News outlets called asking for interviews. The story became bigger than just one incident with Gerald. It became about something people were hungry for: dignity in everyday transactions. David did an interview with a local news station. The reporter asked him about the financial struggles. "Change isn't comfortable," David said. "We've lost some customers who preferred the old way, but we're gaining new ones who appreciate being treated like human beings. In the long run, that's a better foundation for a business." "What about Gerald Brennan's lawsuit?" the reporter pressed. "He claims you destroyed his career over a simple mistake." David chose his words carefully. "It wasn't a simple mistake. It was a pattern of behavior that violated our values and potentially broke discrimination laws. Every employee deserves accountability, including managers." The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. The judge ruled that David had proper cause for termination and had followed all legal procedures. Gerald disappeared from social media after that, reportedly taking a job at a small used car lot 2 states over. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Other dealerships started reaching out to David, asking about his training program. Some genuinely wanted to improve. Others probably just wanted good PR. Either way, Dr. Williams started getting hired by dealerships across the region. Rachel came into David's office one morning with a tablet. "You need to see this month's numbers." David braced himself. "How bad?" "Not bad. Actually, we're up. Not by much, just 4% compared to last year, but we're up." David took the tablet, hardly believing what he was seeing. After months of decline, they were finally climbing back. "And there's more," Rachel continued, unable to hide her smile. "Customer satisfaction scores are the highest they've ever been. Like in the dealership's entire history. We're getting reviews from people saying they drove an hour out of their way specifically to buy from us because of our reputation." David felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for months. They weren't out of the woods yet. They still had work to do, new staff to train, a culture to continue building. But this was proof that it could work, that doing the right thing didn't have to mean business failure. "Get the team together," David said. "Everyone who stuck with us through this. They deserve to hear this." That afternoon, the entire staff gathered in the showroom. David shared the numbers, the customer feedback, the growing interest from other businesses. People who'd been looking worn down suddenly stood a little taller. The ones who'd questioned whether any of this mattered saw the results in black and white. "I know it's been hard," David told them. "I know some of you questioned whether we'd survive this. But look what we built. Look what we're becoming. This is just the beginning." As everyone returned to work, David stood by the window watching customers walk through the door. Each one greeted with a smile. Each one treated with respect. Each one given the dignity they deserved. It was such a simple thing, really. But somehow it had taken months of struggle to make it real. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Saw you on the news, baby. So proud of you," David smiled. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time since he'd walked into this dealership and been kicked out, he felt like they might actually win. 8 months after David had been kicked out of his own dealership, Riverside Auto Sales looked completely different. Not the building itself, that was the same, but everything else had changed in ways that couldn't be measured on a blueprint. It was a Saturday afternoon when a teenage boy walked into the showroom with his mother. The kid was maybe 16, wearing a hoodie and basketball shoes, looking around with wide eyes at all the cars he probably dreamed about driving someday. His mother, a nurse still in her scrubs from a morning shift, held his hand like she was afraid to let go in such a fancy place. David was walking through the showroom when he noticed them. He saw the boy's face, that mixture of wonder and uncertainty, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be there. It was a look David knew too well. Before David could walk over, he watched Kevin approach them with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon. I'm Kevin. Are you folks looking for anything specific today, or would you like to browse?" The mother hesitated. "My son just got his license. We're not buying today, just looking, getting ideas for when we save enough." "That's perfect," Kevin said, and David could hear that he meant it. "Tell you what, let's look at what you're interested in, and I can give you information on all the specs and pricing. No pressure at all. This is his first car, right?" "That's a big deal." The boy nodded, finally smiling. David watched Kevin spend the next 30 minutes showing them different models, letting the kids sit in the driver's seats, explaining features. When they left, the mother had tears in her eyes. She shook Kevin's hand and said, "Thank you for treating us like we mattered." After they left, Kevin found David. "That kid reminded me of my nephew. Just wanted to make sure he had a good experience, you know? Even if they don't buy for years, maybe he'll remember this place." "That's exactly right," David said. "That's exactly what this is about." The numbers told the story better than words could. By month 10, Riverside Auto Sales wasn't just recovering, it was thriving. They'd become the top-performing dealership in the entire chain. Customer satisfaction scores stayed at record highs. Online reviews praised not just the cars, but the experience, the respect, the feeling of being welcomed. Rachel had fully grown into her role as general manager. She'd hired a diverse team that reflected the community they served. The sales floor now had people who spoke 4 different languages. Veterans, single parents, people from different backgrounds who all shared one thing. They understood what it meant to treat others with dignity. One morning, David got an email that made him pause. It was from a local high school principal, asking if he'd be willing to speak at their career day. The principal wrote, "Our students, especially our students of color, need to hear from someone like you. Someone who faced discrimination and turned it into positive change." David agreed. When he stood in that high school gymnasium facing 200 teenagers, he didn't sugarcoat his story. He told them about being kicked out of his own business, about the months of struggle, about wanting to quit on the hard days. "Success isn't just about making money," he told them. "It's about building something that makes the world a little bit better. Something you can be proud of when you look in the mirror." A girl raised her hand. "But wasn't it easier to just run the business the old way? Like financially, easier?" "Maybe for a little while," David answered honestly. "But here's what I learned. A business built on disrespect has a weak foundation. Eventually it crumbles. But a business built on dignity, that's solid. That lasts." After his speech, students lined up to talk to him. Some wanted career advice. Others just wanted to shake his hand. One boy couldn't have been more than 14. Waited until everyone else had left. "Mr. Thompson?" he said quietly. "My dad owns a restaurant. Sometimes I see how he treats certain customers different from others. I never knew how to tell him it was wrong. But after hearing you, maybe I can find the words." David put his hand on the kid's shoulder. "Start by asking him questions. Help him see it. Change doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from conversation." The dealership started a scholarship program, funded by a portion of their profits. Every year they'd give 5 students from underserved communities money for college or trade school. The only requirement was an essay about what dignity meant to them. The first winner was a girl named Jasmine, who wrote about watching her mother get followed around stores like she was going to steal something. She wrote, "Dignity is when someone sees you as a person first, not a problem to solve or a threat to watch." David framed that essay and hung it in his office. One afternoon, almost a year after everything had changed, David was sitting at his desk when Rachel knocked on his door. There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he said it's important. David looked up. Who is it? Gerald Brennan. David's first instinct was to say no, but curiosity got the better of him. Send him in. Gerald looked different. Older, tired, humbled. He stood awkwardly in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter. I'm not here to cause trouble, Gerald said quickly. I just wanted to say something I should have said a long time ago. I was wrong. About everything. The way I treated you, the way I ran this place, the way I saw people. I was wrong. David gestured to a chair. Gerald sat down, his hands folded in his lap. I've been working at a small lot for the past year, Gerald continued. Nothing like this place. And I've had a lot of time to think. I've seen what you built here, saw the news coverage, the success, and I realized that I wasn't protecting this business back then. I was hurting it. I was hurting people. Why are you telling me this? David asked. Because you deserve to hear it, and because I'm trying to be better. I started volunteering, teaching a class at community center about car maintenance, trying to give back, trying to be the person I should have been all along. Gerald stood up. That's all? I'll go now. Gerald, David called as he reached the door. Good luck with the class, really? Gerald nodded, his eyes wet, and left. David sat alone in his office after that, thinking about how far they'd all come. The dealership had become more than just a place that sold cars. It had become a symbol of what was possible when you chose principles over profit, when you valued people over numbers. That evening, as David locked up and walked through the empty showroom, he stopped at the window. Outside, the sign glowed bright, Riverside Auto Sales. Same name, same building, completely different place. His phone buzzed. A text from the young mother who'd come in with her son months ago. We've been saving. We're ready to buy. Will you still work with us? David smiled and texted back, absolutely. Come in any time. He got in his car, the same old Honda he'd driven that first day, and headed home. Some people had asked why he didn't upgrade, buy something flashy from his own lot. But David liked this car. It reminded him where he came from, what he'd fought for, why it all mattered. Change hadn't been easy. It had cost him money, stress, and countless sleepless nights. But sitting in that car, thinking about the teenager who'd walked through his dealership with hope in his eyes, thinking about the team he'd built and the lives they'd touched, David knew something for certain. It had been worth every single struggle. The world wasn't perfect. There were still 1,000 places where people got judged by their appearance, dismissed by their circumstances, made to feel less than human. But at Riverside Auto Sales, and now at 6 other dealerships across the state, there was a space where dignity came first, where every person who walked through the door mattered. And sometimes, David thought as he drove home, that's how you change the world. Not all at once, not with grand gestures, but one person at a time, one interaction at a time, one moment of respect at a time. That was enough. That was everything.